"You're so old-fashioned, Mom. Nobody does things that way anymore." Erica laughed, waving off my advice like dust on her sleeve. I smiled, folded the dish towel, and said, "Sometimes the old ways are what keep us alive. If you're listening, subscribe and tell me where you're from." My name is Eleanor Pierce, and I am 69 years old. I live in Maple Ridge, Ohio, in a small brick house with a tidy porch. For 30 years, I worked nights as a cardiac nurse downtown. The work taught me patience, record-keeping, and the value of quiet hands. My son, Andrew, grew up on packed dinners and steady rules. We kept Sundays for church, gardens, and simple food that lasted. When my husband passed, Andrew became my compass without trying. He called every evening, even from college, just to say goodnight. I learned to breathe again by keeping life small and faithful. That rhythm felt like a promise I could keep. Andrew brought Erica home one summer with the pride of a new discovery. She was lively, smart, and polished in a way that filled rooms. She worked in marketing, loved bright restaurants, and spoke in quick lists. I liked her, truly, because she made my son laugh with his whole face. She called me Mrs. Pierce at first, then Eleanor when I insisted. Their wedding was a whirl of music and glassware, fun and loud. I baked 3 pies and cried behind the kitchen door. Erica hugged me and said, "You raised a good man." I believed her, and I believed us. After the wedding, Andrew and Erica bought a townhome near his office. He asked me to teach him a few home habits he had skipped. I showed him my ledger, the pantry labels, the schedule that protects sleep. He listened with that patient nod I'd always trusted. Erica smiled and said, "We're building our own system, but this is cute." She wasn't cruel, just timelessly certain that new means better. I swallowed the small sting and kept setting the table. Families change shapes, I told myself to, bend without breaking. Love, I reminded myself, is easiest when you don't keep score. We fell into a rhythm that almost worked. I cooked Sunday suppers and sent Andrew home with leftovers. Erica thanked me and asked for recipes, then never used them. She preferred meal kits and subscription plans that arrived with glossy cards. I said nothing, because I know comfort wears many coats. When Andrew got his promotion, I brought a framed photo of his first toolbox. Erica moved it to the office shelf, saying it clashed with the living room. I smiled and found a new place for my feelings. I am good at that, even when it stings. Erica and I bumped on the small things, never the big ones. She thought paper calendars were quaint and told me phones do it better. I replied that batteries die, but ink remembers. She laughed and called me adorable, which is a word that shrinks grown women. I prefer respected to adorable, but I chose silence. I noticed Andrew trying to keep air between us. He bridged conversations with jokes, then stared at his plate. I held my tongue because peace likes quiet rooms. Still, a mother knows when a rope starts to fray. I do not mind being called careful. Careful is how you remember bills, birthdays, and dosages. Careful is how you notice a voice change across the line. One month, Andrew sounded tired behind his congratulations. I asked about sleep. He said deadlines ate the week. Erica said stress builds character and schedules fix everything. I brewed tea, offered B-complex, and kept my notes in a small book. Old habits maybe, but they have saved lives I can name. My hands have held pulses through longer nights than this. Erica loved efficiency almost as much as praise. She ran their calendar like it was a campaign with goals. I admired her drive while missing the way Andrew used to exhale. Their house gleamed, but not every shining thing feels warm. She teased me for using vinegar to clean and journals to track. "You've got a system for everything," she said, half laughing. I said, "Systems keep rooms from swallowing people." She didn't hear it the way I meant. That happens when years stand between 2 women at one table. I kept trying in small, respectful ways, because that is my style. I left soups in freezer jars, labeled by date and ingredients. I stocked a drawer with bandages, a thermometer, and a blood pressure cuff. I typed the family contacts and taped them inside a cabinet door. Erica rolled her eyes, but Andrew kissed my cheek. He knows hospital air, late nights, and the relief of a ready drawer. I was not trying to run their home. I was trying to help them need fewer miracles. On their first anniversary, I baked a simple lemon cake. I wrote a note that said, "Joy stays where people practice it." Erica thanked me, sliced tiny servings, and posted a photo online. The caption called it "Vintage Comfort," which made me smile and wince. Words can sound warm while placing you on a shelf. That night, Andrew called to say work had turned rough again. He joked that success tastes like late pizza and cold coffee. I told him to drink water, walk at lunch, and come by soon. He said he would, and I waited like mothers always do. People say old-fashioned like it means outdated, but it can also mean proven. I still return carts in the parking lot, still handwrite condolence notes. I still believe respect begins in small rooms with clean counters. When Erica calls me old-fashioned, I hear the fear behind the gloss. The fear that quiet things might outlast fast things again. I will not shame a young woman for trying the new road. I will just keep my drawer ready, my ledger current, and my door open. So when the ground shifts, I will be steady enough to hold. It happened on a Wednesday, the kind of day when everything looks ordinary until it isn't. I was folding laundry when my phone buzzed. It was Erica. Her tone was clipped, hurried. "Eleanor, can you remind me how to use that blood pressure cuff you left here?" "Andrew's been dizzy all morning," I asked. "Has he eaten?" She hesitated. "He said he skipped breakfast, but he's fine. I just want to check." I talked her through it, step by step, sleeve rolled, arm level with the heart, no talking during the reading. I could hear Andrew's faint protest in the background. "I'm fine, just tired." Then the cuff beeped. "It says 172/108, Erica said, half laughing. "That can't be right, can it?" "It can," I said quietly. "You need to take him in." "He won't go," she replied. "Then call an ambulance," I said. "Now." An hour later, I stood in the hospital corridor watching a nurse wheel my son toward the cardiac unit. The monitors blinked like small accusations. Erica stood beside me, pale and trembling. "They said his blood pressure's dangerous," she whispered. "They're keeping him overnight." I nodded, steadying her arm. "They're doing what they should." That night, I stayed by his bed while he slept. The doctor, a young man named Patel, spoke gently. "He's been ignoring symptoms for weeks: headaches, fatigue, vision changes. He's lucky it didn't escalate." I thanked him and asked about next steps. "We'll run tests, but he needs rest and consistent medication." I wrote every instruction down in my notebook. Old habit. When Erica returned the next morning, she carried 2 coffees and a look that wasn't pride anymore, it was fear. "He told me not to worry," she said softly. "Said it was just stress." "Stress doesn't cause this by itself," I said. "Skipping care does." She bit her lip. "You tried to warn us." "I tried to help," I said. Over the next week, I watched her unravel under guilt. She followed nurses, questioned charts, scrolled through WebMD like it held forgiveness. When Andrew was discharged, the doctor handed her a folder. "Track every dose, every meal, every reading," he said. She nodded but looked lost, like someone reading a map upside down. At home, I found my old binder pale blue, tabs for diet, sleep, medication, and notes. I cleaned it up, replaced the worn pages, and brought it to their house. "This will help," I said. "You can log everything here." Erica looked at it, hesitant. "You still use paper?" "Paper doesn't crash," I replied. She took it, turning it over like something foreign. For a while, she followed it out of necessity. I stopped by every few days to check on Andrew, to make sure the routine was holding. He was weaker than he admitted, but his color returned slowly. Erica tried to manage the diet plan's sodium limits, meal prep, scheduled walks. She tripped often but learned quickly. Still, I caught glimpses of pride, the same kind that had dismissed my ways before. One afternoon, I found unopened medication bottles on the counter. "He forgot," Erica said, defensive. I remind him, but he's stubborn. I picked one up, checked the date, and wrote it down. "Stubborn isn't new," I said. "But forgetting isn't like him. He needs a schedule." "We have apps for that," she said. "Apps don't walk down hallways with medicine in their hands," I replied gently. She exhaled sharply, then looked at me. "You think you know better." I met her eyes. "I know what worked when I didn't have room to fail." There was no anger in my voice, only memory. She didn't answer. The next morning, Andrew fainted in the kitchen. Erica called me before the ambulance. "He just collapsed," she cried. "I don't know what to do," I said. Check his pulse. Tell me if it's slow or racing. I guided her through it until paramedics arrived. Later, at the hospital, she sat with her face in her hands, whispering, "I should have listened." The doctors said it was medication inconsistency doses, missed or doubled, nothing deliberate, just poor tracking. It was preventable. That word preventable sank deep. I remembered the way she had once laughed at my binder, at my labels, at the way I wrote things down twice. Now, she clutched the same notebook like a life raft. After Andrew stabilized, she came to my house. Her eyes were red but clear. "I don't know how you do it," she said. "You stay calm even when everything's falling apart." I poured her tea and said, "Because panic doesn't heal, consistency does." She nodded slowly. "I called you old-fashioned," she said. "Maybe that's exactly what saved him." I didn't answer. I just handed her the teacup and let silence say the rest. At first, I thought Andrew's recovery was steady, but something in my gut told me otherwise. He looked better, yes, his color returned, his walk stronger, but there were moments, tiny ones, when I caught him rubbing his chest or taking a deeper breath than usual. When I asked, he smiled it off. "I'm fine, Mom. Don't start your detective work." I wanted to believe him. But after decades in hospitals, I knew the signs of someone trying to stay strong for others. I started to notice patterns. The pill organizer I'd set up had gaps, 2 empty compartments on a Tuesday morning when it should have been 1. A pharmacy receipt dated 3 days before his last refill. I didn't accuse anyone. Instead, I took quiet notes in my binder. On April 12, missed medication. April 18, mild chest pressure after mowing the lawn. April 22, fatigue reported after work. I wasn't being nosy, I was protecting what was left of my peace. One Saturday afternoon, I stopped by while Erica was out shopping. Andrew was napping on the couch, TV still playing. I turned it off and noticed a small pile of unopened mail on the side table: hospital statements, test results, insurance notices. My heart tightened. He was letting things pile up, just like his symptoms. I gently stacked the papers and saw the top envelope was marked urgent. Billing inquiry. The amount circled in red, $2,480. I didn't touch it further, but the sight stayed with me. Later that week, I called Dr. Patel's office, not to pry, but to confirm Andrew's follow-up. The nurse hesitated. "He missed his last appointment," she said softly. "Would you like me to reschedule for him?" "No," I replied. "Please note that I'll remind him myself." I hung up, my hand steady, but my heart heavy. That evening, I stopped by under the excuse of bringing soup. Erica opened the door, looking tired and irritated. "You didn't have to come," she said. "He's doing fine." I smiled. "That's good to hear." She stepped aside, reluctantly. "He's resting." When I went to the kitchen to set the soup down, I noticed his medication bottles in a bowl near the sink. One was nearly full, another was empty before its refill date. I didn't say a word. I just washed my hands, reheated the soup, and made a mental note. At dinner, Andrew joined us, pale but trying to smile. "Work's been crazy," he said. "I think I just need rest," Erica chimed in. "He's overdoing it, but I've got it under control." Her voice carried that familiar certainty, the kind that leaves no room for questions. "That's good," I said gently. "Just make sure he eats and takes his meds." "He's not a child, Eleanor," she replied with a thin smile. "He knows." After I left, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing her words. He's not a child. She was right, of course. But mothers know when the balance between pride and risk begins to tip. A few days later, I decided to verify things quietly. I went to the pharmacy to refill my own prescription and asked the pharmacist, Mr. Langford, how long the system kept family medication records. He looked up, friendly as always. "A year at least, Mrs. Pierce. Need me to print yours?" "No, thank you," I said. "I just wanted to check if my son's refill came through last week." He mentioned a delay. He checked the computer. "Not yet," he said. "His last pickup was over a month ago." That was all the confirmation I needed. I thanked him and walked out, keeping my composure until I reached the car. My suspicion wasn't anger, it was grief wearing a practical face. That evening, I called my old colleague, Martha Lee, who now worked part-time at the same hospital. "Can you check if Andrew's chart was updated after his discharge?" I asked. She paused, then said quietly, "No new visits. Is everything all right?" It will be, I replied. Over the next few days, I started collecting everything not to expose Erica, but to build a picture. A copy of the doctor's discharge plan, an updated insurance notice, and my handwritten log. I kept it all in a single manila folder labeled Health Records, Andrew Pierce. It wasn't snooping, it was safeguarding. I'd seen too many families collapse under disorganization and pride. I wasn't going to let mine be one of them. When I visited again, Erica was calmer but distant. He's working from home now, she said, trying to ease back in. That's good, I replied. He needs stability. He needs independence, she corrected. And I need space to manage this my way. I smiled politely. Of course, I'll stay out of your way. But staying out of her way didn't mean staying blind. I placed a small note in Andrew's wallet later that week, a single line written in neat, black ink. Your mother keeps records for a reason. Don't forget what that means. I didn't expect thanks. I only hoped that someday he'd understand. And as it turned out, that small act would become the reason both he and Erica learned what love looks like when it refuses to give up. The next morning, I drove across town to visit Martha Lee in person. She lived in a modest bungalow, still filled with medical journals and half-used notepads. She greeted me with that same efficient warmth I remembered from the hospital days. You sound worried, she said, handing me a mug of tea before I'd even sat down. I told her everything about the missed refills, the skipped appointments, the careful facade that was starting to crack. She didn't interrupt, just listened, the way good nurses do. When I finished, she leaned forward. You're right to be concerned, she said. High blood pressure isn't a sprint, it's a system. You miss one thing, it all falls apart. She pulled out a small notepad and began writing. First, she said, you need to make sure his prescriptions are renewed automatically. No middle steps. Second, track his vitals again every 2 days, same time, same position. You'd be surprised how many people think they're getting better just because they feel better. She paused and smiled. Third, document everything, but not for confrontation, for protection. Facts don't argue. I nodded, grateful. You think I should talk to Erica? Not yet, she said. She's still in defense mode. Pride's a slow fever, it has to break on its own. But if you wait too long, it becomes dangerous. So we act without accusation. I left her house feeling steadier, armed not with judgment but clarity. That night, I drafted a simple chart: date, time, blood pressure, medication, meal notes. I printed copies and slipped one into Andrew's folder at home, one into mine. Old-fashioned, yes, but effective. A week later, I brought Martha's suggestions to Andrew's house under the guise of a check-in. He was sitting on the porch, looking better but thinner. You always come bearing systems, he teased gently. They've kept people alive longer than luck ever did, I replied. He smiled, a little weary. Erica's been distant, he said. I think she's blaming herself. She's scared, I said. Fear wears a lot of disguises. Inside, I found Erica sorting laundry, her movements sharp, mechanical. You're here again, she said without looking up. Briefly, I said. I just wanted to drop this off. I handed her the printed chart. It's simple, might make things easier. She frowned at it, scanning the lines. You think I'm not doing enough? I think you're doing your best, I said softly. This helps your best work better. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she folded the page carefully and set it on the counter. You really don't quit, do you? Not when it comes to him, I said. Later that evening, Martha called. You did the right thing, she said. Don't expect gratitude yet. Expect resistance first. That's how learning looks when ego's still in the room. I laughed quietly. You sound like you're giving rounds. Old habits, she said. But keep your calm, Eleanor. You're doing what nurses do. We prepare for the crash before it happens. The next few days, small changes began to show. Erica texted me updates brief, factual, stripped of pride. BP 138/88 today. Took meds after breakfast. Then, went for a walk. Slept through the night. I never corrected, never commented, just replied with simple acknowledgement. Good. Keep steady. Martha called again midweek. She's learning, she said, slowly, but learning. I smiled, watching the rain slide down my window. Old-fashioned lessons take time to take root, I said. They always have. By the end of that month, Erica had printed the charts herself. I found them clipped neatly to a clipboard in their kitchen, my handwriting replaced by her own. When she caught me looking, she said quietly, "I like having it this way. It makes me feel in control." "That's what care should do," I said. "Give you something firm to hold when everything else shakes." For the first time in months, she smiled, not as defense, not as performance, but as recognition. It was small, but real. And sometimes that's where grace begins. Summer came early that year, thick and humid, the kind of heat that made the air feel personal. By then, Andrew was well enough to return to work part-time, though I could tell his strength wasn't what it used to be. He insisted he felt fine, but I saw the tremor in his hand when he lifted his coffee, the way his voice slowed when he was tired. I said nothing, but my silence carried meaning. Erica felt it too. At first, she tried to keep everything polished, the house spotless, meals plated like magazine photos, her smile stretched wide. But pressure has a way of peeling layers. Beneath her brightness, I began to see the cracks. She snapped at small things, misplaced papers, forgot appointments. One afternoon, she called me in tears. "He was supposed to take his pills at 8, she said, her voice shaking. "I found them still on the counter. He swore he took them." "Then check the bottle," I said calmly. "Count what's left." There was a pause, then a soft sob. "You're right, he didn't." That night, I drove over without asking. Erica opened the door, eyes swollen. "I can't do this," she said. "It's too much." I stepped inside, placed my purse down, and said, "Then we'll do it together." I made tea, sat her down, and we made a new plan. No apps, no digital reminders, just one large calendar on the wall, color-coded, clear, visible. "You're really serious about this paper thing," she said, half smiling through her tears. "Serious enough to save my son," I replied. For a while, it worked. She filled in each day like a student desperate to pass. I checked in weekly, quietly, without judgment. The rhythm steadied the house, even softened her tone. Then, life tested us again. Andrew's company announced layoffs, and his position was at risk. The stress hit like a wave. He began sleeping less, pacing at night, skipping breakfast. I noticed his readings creeping back up. 152 over 98. 160 over 104. Erica stopped writing in the chart. "He doesn't want me treating him like a patient," she said. "Then treat him like someone you want to keep," I said. But she was fraying. Bills piled up, insurance renewals delayed, tempers short. I saw it in the numbers. I kept 12 missed medication times in 1 month, 3 canceled appointments, 1 unopened doctor's letter. I didn't need to confront her. The pattern spoke louder than words. Then came the night I'll never forget. Erica called just after midnight. Her voice was thin and broken. "He's not waking up right," she said. "He's breathing, but it's slow. I don't know what to do." "Call 911, I said. "Now, I'll meet you there." By the time I reached the hospital, they'd stabilized him. Severe hypertension, nearly a crisis. Erica sat in the waiting area, face in her hands, whispering the same sentence again and again. I thought he was fine. I sat beside her. "You can't measure health by quiet days," I said. "You measure it by what you track when no one's looking." Over the next 48 hours, I stayed in that hospital room calm, practical, present. I asked the nurses for copies of his charts, wrote down every instruction, corrected the pharmacy list when they almost missed a dosage. When the attending physician came in, he looked at me and said, "You've done this before. Too many times," I replied. Erica watched, silent, as I moved through every step without panic. Later that evening, she said, "I used to think you were controlling. Now I see you're just prepared." She started writing in the log again, this time without me asking. Each entry neater than the last. Date, time, dose, vitals. I didn't praise or correct her. I just let her work. Respect grows best when no one's demanding it. When Andrew was discharged the second time, I gave Erica a folder labeled Emergency File. Inside was a copy of his medical history, prescriptions, and insurance information. "Keep this somewhere easy to grab," I said. "If anything ever happens again, this will save minutes, and minutes matter." She nodded, holding it carefully like something sacred. In the weeks that followed, the house began to change. The spotless perfection faded, replaced by something gentler. Open shoes near the door, a half-read magazine on the counter, a mug left cooling beside the sink. The tension loosened its grip. Erica still worked, but she came home earlier, sat beside him more. I'd stop by sometimes and find her taking his pressure, her tone soft, her movements sure. Once, she caught me smiling and said, "Don't look so proud. I'm still learning." "We all are," I said. But even as things improved, I kept my quiet logs, my steady watch. I wasn't guarding against failure anymore. I was protecting progress. Because healing, I knew, isn't a single miracle. It's 12 visits, $184 in medication, and one woman finally understanding that love and discipline are the same language spoken two ways. By late August, Andrew's readings stabilized. Erica began sharing small triumphs with me. He walked 2 miles today. His numbers stayed under 130. Her pride was cautious but sincere. "You did this," she told me once. "No," I said. "We all did it. Time just needed proof we could work together." And quietly, beneath all that healing, I realized something else. She hadn't just changed her tune. She'd started humming the same song I'd been singing all along, steady, humble, built to last. It happened on a quiet Sunday, the kind of morning that begins with sunlight spilling softly across the floor and ends with a truth too solid to ignore. Andrew was finally home from his follow-up appointment, resting on the couch, a blanket pulled to his chest. The air smelled faintly of the soup I'd brought earlier that week. Erica stood by the kitchen counter, staring down at the open binder, the same blue one she'd once called old-fashioned. Its pages were filled with her own handwriting now. When I walked in, she didn't look up right away. "I was just checking the last few readings," she said. Her voice was calm, almost detached. "His numbers are holding steady." "That's good," I said. "You've kept everything organized." "I had to," she replied, still flipping through the pages. Then she looked up, eyes glassy but clear. "I don't know how you did this alone for so many years. Taking care of people, keeping it all together, it's exhausting." I smiled faintly. "It's only exhausting when you fight it. Once you accept that steadiness is love, it becomes natural." She nodded slowly, then leaned on the counter. "I used to think you were meddling. Every list, every label, I thought you were trying to control us." She gave a small laugh, one that cracked at the end. "Turns out you were just trying to save us before we even knew we needed saving." I walked to the table and sat across from her. "People misunderstand care all the time," I said. "It looks like control to those who've never had to hold chaos together." She took a deep breath, as if preparing herself for something. "I found the note you left in Andrew's wallet," she said quietly. "The one about keeping records." I didn't answer. "At first, I thought it was condescending," she continued. "But the night he collapsed, when the paramedics asked about his medications and I didn't know a thing, I realized that note wasn't criticism. It was a lifeline." Her voice trembled. "You were right, Eleanor. I was arrogant. I thought being modern meant being smarter. I thought your ways were relics." She swallowed hard. "But when things fell apart, it wasn't my apps or plans that saved him. It was your notebook, your lists, your old-fashioned way of loving." I reached across the table and took her hand. "It's not about being right," I said softly. "It's about being ready. Life doesn't care how new your methods are. It only listens to the steady ones." For a long moment, we just sat there in the quiet. The house, once stiff with tension, now breathed easily. Then Erica stood, went to the living room, and returned holding a small envelope. "I want you to have this," she said. I opened it. Inside was a folded sheet of paper, slightly smudged with fingerprints. Across the top, in her handwriting, was a simple heading, "Household Care Plan, version 2. She smiled through a tear. "I updated your system. Added a few new sections, one for appointments, another for notes from the doctor." She laughed softly. "Don't worry, I kept it on paper." I couldn't help but smile. Looks like old and new finally made peace. Just then, Andrew stirred from the couch. "What are you two plotting?" he mumbled, his voice thick with sleep. Erica walked over, kissed his forehead, and said, "Nothing, sweetheart. Just a partnership between generations." He grinned weakly. "That sounds dangerous." We all laughed, the first full, genuine laughter we'd shared in months. The kind that rolls through a house and leaves it lighter than before. A few minutes later, as I gathered my things to leave, Erica followed me to the door. She hesitated before speaking. "I know saying sorry isn't enough," she said, "but I want you to know, I see you now. The way you love, the way you hold things together. I used to think it was stubbornness. Now I know it's grace." I met her eyes. "Grace isn't something you say, Erica. It's something you pass on." She nodded, a quiet tear slipping down her cheek. "Then I'll try to do that. For him. For us." When I stepped outside, the late afternoon light spread across the yard, warm and forgiving. I looked back through the window. Erica had returned to the couch, tucking the blanket around Andrew, her movements careful, measured. She glanced up once and caught me watching. This time, her smile wasn't forced. It was gratitude in its purest form. Driving home, I thought about how respect often arrives disguised as resistance. It pushes, questions, tests, but if you stay calm long enough, it comes back to you in silence and understanding. Time doesn't just teach lessons, it reveals character. And that evening, as I placed her updated version of my binder on my shelf beside the old one, I realized something I hadn't before. Maybe wisdom isn't about being right or remembered. Maybe it's about leaving behind a system someone else will use when they finally learn what love requires. The weeks that followed felt quieter, steadier, not peaceful exactly, but balanced in a way that comes after storms. Andrew's strength began to return. He took his medication on time, ate meals with intention, and laughed more easily. I started visiting just once a week instead of 3 times, and every time I walked through the door, I noticed some small evidence of change. The cluttered counters were gone, replaced by a binder open on the kitchen table, pages filled, charts updated, notes written in 2 hands now instead of 1. One evening, Erica handed me a cup of tea before I could even ask. "Chamomile," she said with a smile. "For calm, right?" I nodded. "Exactly right." It was such a small moment, but I could feel the sincerity behind it. She'd begun to mirror the steadiness she once resisted. Andrew joined us at the table, his color warm, his voice full again. "You know," he said, looking at Erica, "you've been running this house like a clinic, in a good way." She laughed, embarrassed. "I had the best teacher." I smiled quietly. "You both learned the same lesson, that care isn't a reaction. It's preparation." Later that week, Erica called me in the middle of the day. "I made your lentil stew," she said proudly. "It's actually really good." I chuckled. "Told you the old ways work." She paused for a second, then said softly, "They do. And I'm sorry it took me so long to see that." Apologies are strange things. They don't erase what came before, but they make space for something new to grow. I didn't need her regret. What mattered was that she had learned to listen, not just to me, but to herself. By early autumn, Andrew was cleared to return to work full-time, though with limits. He took shorter days and longer lunches, small changes that kept his pulse steady. I saw him once sitting on their porch reading a newspaper, the paper kind, not his phone, and it made me smile. Old habits finding new hosts. One evening, they invited me over for dinner. Erica cooked, and it was good, seasoned just right, served without fuss. The table, once a place of tension, now felt warm and human. During dessert, Erica said, "We've been talking about doing something different this year. Giving back, I mean." "Oh?" I asked. "How so?" She looked at Andrew, then back at me. "We want to donate to the cardiac wing at St. Mary's, where you worked. Maybe fund a patient room. Andrew says we could name it the Pierce Family Suite." I froze for a moment, moved beyond words. "That's a wonderful idea," I said finally. "But you don't have to name it after me." Andrew smiled. "It's not about naming. It's about remembering who taught us how to stay steady." That night, as I drove home, I thought about the strange way life had folded in on itself. The same hospital halls that once held my footsteps would now carry someone else's story. Maybe a young nurse using a binder I helped inspire, or a family learning to breathe again after a close call. It was a kind of continuity, one that felt truer than any inheritance. A few weeks later, Erica stopped by my house alone. She brought a small basket soup, bread, and a card. "Andrew's resting," she said, "but I wanted to come." We sat in the living room, and for the first time, the silence between us felt companionable. She looked around at the framed photos, the tidy shelves, the faint smell of lavender polish in the air. You keep everything so intentional, she said. It's peaceful. That's what happens when you've outlived noise, I said with a small smile. She hesitated before speaking again. When he first got sick, I was angry at you, she admitted. I thought you were judging me, but now I understand you were just further down the road. You'd already learned the things I hadn't. I nodded. We all think we're the first ones to face the storm, until someone older reminds us the rain has fallen before. She reached for my hand, her eyes soft. You've been more of a mother to me than I deserved. You were learning, I said. That's what daughters do. When she left, I watched her walk to her car, shoulders straighter, movements slower, calmer. There was no trace of the woman who once measured love in efficiency. Now she measured it in care. By the end of that year, Andrew's health was stable, their marriage stronger, their home filled with something I hadn't felt there in a long time: gratitude. And every time I visited, Erica would press leftovers into my hands, saying, "You taught me to never waste what nourishes." She meant the food, but I knew better. Winter arrived gently that year, with soft snow and quiet streets. The world felt slower, the way it does when people finally learn to live at a human pace. Andrew was healthy, working less and smiling more. Erica had changed too, the kind of change that doesn't announce itself, but shows up in small gestures. She sent me weather updates, grocery coupons, even photos of new recipes she'd modernized, always ending her messages with, "You were right again." One afternoon in January, I stopped by their house with a jar of homemade soup. When I walked in, I saw Erica sitting at the table, the blue binder open beside her. She was helping Andrew record his readings, the same way I used to. The kitchen smelled of broth and rosemary, and sunlight caught the edge of her wedding ring as she wrote. She looked up and smiled. "We've been consistent for 6 months, she said proudly. The doctor said his levels are the best they've ever been. That's what steady love does, I said. It rebuilds quietly. Later, when I was leaving, she followed me to the door with her coat still in her hand. Eleanor, she said softly, you were right about everything, but especially about time. It doesn't just heal, it teaches. I smiled. That's why it moves so slowly. Lessons take patience. In the spring, I received a letter from St. Mary's Hospital. The Pierce family suite had officially opened a recovery room furnished with calm colors, soft lighting, and a bookshelf stocked with gratitude journals and small binders for patients to track their progress. At the bottom of the letter was a note in Erica's handwriting, dedicated to those who still believe that the old ways work. I sat in my kitchen holding that letter for a long time. The same hands that had once carried my son through fevers and fear now held proof that wisdom, when passed with grace, doesn't fade, it multiplies. That evening, I turned on the lamp, poured myself tea, and smiled at the quiet house around me. Thanks for listening, I whispered, as if to the world beyond the window. Share your story in the comments, your voice matters.